The Drag Race Makeover is one of the most divisive challenges in the entire franchise. Some people love it, some people hate it, but if there's one thing that's for certain, nobody likes the judges' critiques. The critiques are never consistent, and they never have been, and it's worse in the makeover than in any other challenge in a season. There are so many rules that you need to follow in order to succeed in a makeover, and those rules always change depending on whether a certain queen is a producer favourite. The makeover has always been the challenge that the producers use to knock out someone they don't care about, and it's clear that they're not planning on stopping that anytime soon. Essentially, the rules of the makeover challenge is that you have to look good, but you can't outshine your partner, and they can't outshine you. But you can't look identical because that's a cop-out, but you also have to have family resemblance, whether that person looks like you or not. You also need to stay true to your brand, show us who you are, and why you two work so well in the same drag family, but don't do the same thing you do every other week. Otherwise it's repetitive, and we want to see what you can do differently. Got it? Alright, racers, start your engines, and may the best drag queen win. In my opinion, I like the idea of a makeover, and I love seeing the relationships that are formed between the queens and their partners, and when that bond culminates to them winning with an incredible transformation and runway presentation, it's beautiful to see. But unfortunately, for every correct judgment of a wonderful story formed by two people who have an inspiring mutual respect for each other, there's usually at least one other very, very questionable placement, top or bottom, high or low, that just makes little to no sense no matter which way you try to see things. It happens pretty much every year, and it's definitely never going to stop. So today I'm going to discuss the top 10 most questionable placements in the history of the Drag Race Makeover. This video was inspired by Moon in the latest episode of Drag Race France All-Stars. I've been loving the season so far, and while there have been a few placements that could be argued in weeks past, none of them until Thursday's episode made me want to pull my hair out. Moon was placed in the bottom 2 for presenting this on the runway, despite Peach and her partner looking like those elves from Rise of the Guardians. The reason Nikki Doll gave for Moon, one of the most versatile queens on this cast, being in the bottom 2 was, I'll give you 3 seconds to guess, we've seen it before! And to prove their point, they showed a clip of one of Moon's looks from her original season that wasn't even anything like this makeover. Everything she's done since then has been different each week, and yet they still chose to criticise her and then put a stain on her track record on a challenge that she honestly should have won. I'll get more in depth about this when I release my review of episode 5 of Drag Race France All-Stars, but yeah, I'm pissed with the producers right now because the season has honestly been incredible up until this point. So before we get into the list, I'm going to explain my rules for the ranking. Firstly, the way I judge a makeover is 1. Do they look good? 2. Do they present themselves well? And 3. Are they from the same drag house? That's what I think of when I think family resemblance, because the truth is, no matter how hard you try, if someone doesn't look like you, you can't just make them look like you. Do they have a similar aesthetic? Cool, then they have resemblance. Another thing, when I say questionable placements, I'm not talking about the could'ves, I'm talking about the should'ves. For example, while I am someone who agrees the Crystal Method deserved to win the Season 12 makeover, I'm not putting her on the list because I also think Jada deserved it. Same goes for Sasha Velour and Trinity the Treasure Chest in Season 9. I'm also going to be sticking to the US and UK for this list, but if I ever do a part 2, I can also look at Canada or any other suggestions you might have in the comments. Lastly, there is no need to take this so seriously. I'm simply giving my opinion, and if you don't agree with me, that's fine. This is just something I desire to do for fun. I'm also speaking about the following contestants based solely on their performance in the challenge, and that alone, I'm not judging them as people because I do not know any of them personally. I'm also just going to shout out a few quick honourable mentions before we get into the proper list. Firstly, the entire Season 4 makeover. I don't disagree with the placements that ended up happening, but I think everyone was terrible, and this was the worst makeover of all time, and all 5 of them should have lip-synced for their lives. Next up is Charity and Releasa in UK 6. No, I do not disagree with them being the bottom 2, but I'm more confused about the fact that they weren't given any negative critiques. Like, that's a little mean. The only time they should do that is if it's a non-elimination episode, but this wasn't, so those poor queens had no idea if they were going to be lip-syncing or not. Lastly, we have Denali and Olivia Lux in the Season 13 Freaky Friday Queens Challenge, and this is an honourable mention because while I do agree that they shouldn't have been the bottom 2 if we're judging in teams, I still don't think that either of them did a good job in the makeover. They were better than the other 2 for sure, but they still both looked a little busted, so I think they should have just been low. This does, however, lead us into number 10 from this same challenge, Tina Burner being low after that atrocity that she bestowed upon Rosé's face. While I do respect Tina more now than I did when I first watched the season, I still can't get over the fact that she didn't lip sync for this. I don't get what they were trying to do with Tina on Season 13. It was probably to do with the storyline with Rosé that never ended up happening in the way the producers wanted, so that led to Tina's very bizarre treatment. 2 episodes earlier, they put her in the bottom 3 when she didn't deserve it at all, but then when she actually did deserve the bottom, she was saved. But yeah, this was criminal. I'm glad she's had a glow up on All Stars, but we'll never forget this. We'll never forget. In the 9th place, we have a fairly recent example, and it's one that people may not agree with, but it still bugs me. Lexi Love in the season 17 parent makeover. This is the only episode of the season I watched live as it aired while I was in America, and I was really confused about the fact that Lexi was safe/low. Now, Lexi and her mother look really beautiful, they have a beautiful presentation, and it seems like they're having a good time. But then Michelle comes in saying, I'm not getting family resemblance. I could see you guys being friends, going out to the club, but family resemblance, I don't see it. Huh? What's that supposed to mean? Because they aren't identical, they don't have family resemblance? It's her frickin' mother. They have family resemblance just through that. What did Michelle mean? Because they didn't have the same hair colour? Like, not every child has the same hair colour or, like, other recognisable visual characteristics as their parent. People within one family can look different. They do realise that, right? Lexi and her mother looked good. Check. They had a neat presentation. Check. And regardless of whether or not they have what Michelle considers to be family resemblance, their outfits are of a similar aesthetic, and therefore Lexi deserves to be high. Honestly, I think they only did this to add some suspense, even though everyone watching this episode could see very clearly that the bottom two were Anya and Jules. Next up, we're talking about a high placement that should have been a win. Vanjie on season 11. I love Brooklyn Heights. I want her and Utica to adopt me as their drag daughter, and she did very well with her makeover of Plastique. But come on, Vanjie was right there. The reason I think Vanjie absolutely deserved the win over Brooke was, 1, she had the best makeover, 2, she deserved a win at this point in the competition, and most importantly, 3, she needed a win at this point in the competition. Vanjie had really been struggling in the second half of the competition, and coming right off of 2 bottom 2 placements in a row, this makeover was going to be her make or break moment in the season. She gets partnered up with Ariel Versace, and they look absolutely stunning. Ariel doesn't even look like Ariel, and yes, they are identical, but it's also about the transformation that happens. Brooklyn also looks stunning, and I understand why they gave her the win, but she already had 2 wins, and we all knew that she was going to be a finalist, but Vanjie was the only person left in this top 6 without a win, and this was really her last chance to prove herself in the competition, and even if she was still going to be eliminated in the next episode, giving her the last win of the season would have amplified the high note that she ended up going out on. We all love Vanjie, and even if she's never been the best at Drag Race, she has one of the most perfect personalities for television, and she's such fun to watch. I'm not mad about Brooklyn winning in itself, because it's not like her makeover was mediocre or anything, but Vanjie winning this challenge would have been so satisfying and was just an overall stronger storyline payoff. While we're here, I also just want to quickly mention Evie Oddly from the same makeover. I don't care what the judges say, I love this makeover, and it being crafty is not a bad thing. This is slightly messy, but messy is what Evie's all about. Her and Scarlett did well in the makeover, she did not need to be low, because Silky and Nina were the obvious bottom 2. I'm not going to talk too much about this next one, but number 7 is Monet X Change in the All Stars 4 makeover. Yes, they had a good performance and their outfits were really cute, but the makeup on Monet's friend is so bright. Yes, it was better than Monet's makeover of season 10, but no shade, that's quite a low bar. I love Monet and I think she was great on All Stars 4, but for this particular makeover I would have switched her out with either Mohart or Trinity the Top Hat. 6th place, and we have one that really bothered me, but I don't know if this is a hot take, but I don't think Lucy LaDuca had any business being in the bottom 2 during the season 15 teacher makeover, and they only did it so they could conclude Lucy's storyline with Lux Noir London. Yes, Lucy's concept is quite basic, and the outfits are just simple, inverted, coloured versions of each other, but plenty of contestants have done that in the past and have been praised for it. Her partner looks really good, and they look like they're in the same drag family. Meanwhile, Mistress, yes, she and her partner look good, but it's a lot more basic, and it's just not as unique to Mistress's brand, I guess. Compared to the stuff that Mistress wore on season 15, this is just kind of disappointing to me. The thing is, Lux very clearly was the worst this week, but I just don't look at Lucy's makeover and see a bottom 2 performance. I understand why they didn't want Lucy in the top 4, because they wanted Lux, the younger fashion queen, to end up triumphing over her, and that makes sense based on the season, but I just think she shouldn't have been in the bottom 4 this challenge. Lux and Lucy had the storyline that Lexi and Susie should have had, and I will admit coming 2 episodes after winning a challenge together, one sending the other home, was a satisfying ending to the story, but it's been 2 years and I don't think it was fully justified based only on this challenge. In the 5th place is a low placement that I didn't think much of at first, but as the years have gone by, I now realise that this honestly should have been in the top. Miss Fame in the season 7 conjoined twins makeover. Now, I will say this is one of my favourite makeover episodes, and I love the way they did this challenge. If they ever wanted to bring an eliminated queen back into the competition ever again, this is the way to do it. Pearl and Trixie absolutely killed it. Katya and Kasha also did a fantastic job. I also really liked Violet and Max, and I don't know why people say it's not good. Yes, it's simple, but it's well done, and it matches Violet's brand. Ginger and Sasha and Jaden and Tempest were clearly the worst that week, and they were the correct bottom 2. Still waiting for Jaden's All-Star appearance. But they decided to put Miss Fame in the bottom 3 because apparently the plastic surgery thing has been done too much. And yes, especially now, I agree that this type of plastic surgery look has been overdone. But for this particular challenge and the way they presented themselves as conjoined twins who were sawing themselves apart, I thought this was executed really well. But I just don't think the producers cared much about Miss Fame this season because Kennedy Davenport totally should have been low instead of her. This is really basic and it's more of a boring basic than a clever basic. Miss Fame had been struggling in the competition up until this point, and I think she's the queen with the most low placements without being in the bottom 2. I think most of those other low placements were justified, but this makeover deserved a safe at worst. We're jumping over to the UK for the number 4 entry, and we're going to talk about 2 makeovers from the same episode. The first ever UK makeover from Series 1, Episode 7. So we had the Vivienne, RIP, Davina De Campo, Bagger Chips, and Cheryl Hole, or Cheryl as she now goes by. This was the last episode before the finale, so this was going to be the challenge that would determine the top 3 of the season. The Vivienne at this point had 3 wins. Bagger Chips also had 3 wins. Davina had 2 wins, and Cheryl had no wins. Yeah, it's pretty obvious who the top 3 queens of the season should be. So basically, no matter what, Cheryl was going home this episode. And of course, if the top 3 all have the same amount of wins, that makes it more intriguing because that way it's anyone's game. Davina needed 1 more win to match up with Viv and Bagger. And so Davina wins the makeover with these horrible, horrible gowns, and Cheryl goes home despite having the best look, transformation, and presentation of the week. If this wasn't the last challenge before the finale, the placements should have been Cheryl winning, the Vivienne high, and then Davina and Bagger as the bottom 2. It's a shame because on 2 out of 3 of her seasons, Cheryl could have had a win, but other circumstances prevented her from managing to grab it. On Canada vs. the World Season 2, she could have won Episode 2, but she had a bad runway. Gosh, I really wish that season had a top 2. Like, still do the Beaver, but you can also have a top 2 to win the power of the Beaver. And on UK Series 1, this was just an unfortunate time to do the best in the challenge. So even though Davina and Cheryl's placements in this challenge were reversed from what they really should have been, it does make sense why they judged this makeover the way they did, because it wouldn't feel right to have Cheryl in the finale over Viv, Bagger and Davina, as horrible as that sounds. And since they know that Cheryl would beat Bagger in a lip sync 99% of the time, they made them perform to an Amy Winehouse song. I mean, the episode before, Cheryl got to perform to a Cheryl song in front of Cheryl herself, so I guess it evens out. Love Cheryl, I wouldn't mind seeing her on a UK All-Stars just so she can get a single challenge win. She doesn't need to win the season, she just needs a win. She deserves one. Number 3, we're going all the way back to Season 1, and we have Rebecca winning the first ever makeover on Drag Race. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one, because I think they weren't really sure what they wanted for the makeover yet. But, well, I think they still don't now, but in this case, they were clearly looking for family resemblance, and to them, in this case, family resemblance meant looking identical, despite those dresses being really simple. We all know Chanel should have won this makeover. Number 2 is one that I feel very strongly about, and I don't think it's really talked about much within the fandom, but I can't believe Alaska didn't lip sync for her life after what she did to Nebraska. Now, Season 5 is my favourite season of Drag Race. I just think almost everything about it is perfect. The queens, the challenges, the storylines, and most of the judging. Season 5 is probably the least rigged season in history, and before you say, so-and-so should have won this challenge, personally, even if the win could have gone to someone else, I don't think there was any challenges where one queen vastly outperformed another and didn't win the challenge. However, Alaska, as much as I love her, she 100% should have been in the bottom 2 for this challenge. The outfits are ugly and boring, the wigs are too big and are hanging on by a single hair clip, and don't get me started on the padding. Coco had no storyline left in the season after Alyssa left, and her leaving here is justified since her partner's makeup is a little off, and they don't look like they're from the same drag family. Detox, I thought, did a pretty okay job. It's not perfect, but at least they look like drag sisters, and there's nothing really egregious about this makeover. Detox was fully only in the bottom because of the performance she did with her partner, because that did go wrong, but I think the makeover itself should come first in the judging and then the performance. I think the reason they saved Alaska here was mainly so they could get rid of Coco. We'd seen Detox lip sync already, and it was a pretty good lip sync, but we hadn't seen Alaska lip sync yet, so they weren't sure what she was capable of, including the fact that Coco seemed quite checked out of the competition without Alyssa there to be her arch rival. Putting Detox against Coco would be better than risking Alaska going out against Coco and losing, because the producers really had no plans for Coco beyond her storyline with Alyssa. And finally, that brings us to number 1. You all know what it is, I'm still not over it almost 3 years later. Dakota Schiffer on UK4, the Queen Team Makeover. Where do I begin? Firstly, this was the episode about RuPaul. There was never any explanation given as to why, but I'm just assuming that Ru was either testing Michelle out on her hosting abilities for when she would eventually take over for him on Drag Race Down Under, or he was too busy fracking.
No, not that. Oh.
They clearly wanted Dakota gone this episode, and they would do whatever it takes to make sure this was her last episode. Dakota's storyline on UK4 was really interesting. She started out in the bottom 2, which a lot of people disagreed with, but I honestly thought it was fair. But then she won the next 2 consecutive episodes, deservedly so. So the producers clearly cared about her enough to give her 2 wins, but immediately after that, they sort of didn't really know what to do with her. She was safe in episode 4, then in the bottom 2 for episode 5, even though that episode honestly should have been a top 2. And then she was safe for Snatch Game, even though she was the second best with her performance as Pete Burns. She was in the top 6 with Danny Beard and Cheddar Gorgeous, who were clearly the 2 best competitors in the season. But she was also with Pixie Polite, who didn't really have much of a storyline beyond being friends with Danny. Black Pepper, who absolutely killed every aspect of the first challenge, but every episode since then was either safe or in the bottom 2. And John was Blonde, who I guess was trying to have an underdog storyline, but it never went anywhere. And while John Biz did do well in a couple of challenges, she never managed to get a win over Danny or Cheddar. Dakota had a much more interesting underdog storyline in the works, and this makeover was the perfect opportunity for her to pick herself up again and maybe pose as the only other potential threat to Danny or Cheddar, since she's the only other person left with more than 1 win, and she honestly was an unexpected lip-sync assassin from episode 1. Now, I don't think she should have won the makeover. I'd say she was a pretty good 2nd or 3rd place, definitely in the top half of all the makeovers presented. She and her partner looked really cute. They look like drag sisters, their outfits are good, their makeup is good, their presentation was good. I'm personally not crazy about the dress her partner is wearing, but that's just because it's not my taste. Taking Dakota's brand that she's presented all season into consideration, she definitely did a good job this week. What does Michelle say? We've seen it before, every week it's the same silhouette. You need to be more versatile. Listen, yes, Dakota had worn that silhouette quite a few times throughout the season, but she also wore other stuff. Also, I know the judges want to see versatility. That's the way it's always been and always will be. But I think the 3 weeks where you don't ask a queen to show versatility are the first episode, the last episode, and the makeover. They ignored all the nice stuff about the makeover and decided to go in on Dakota for doing what she was asked to do for this particular challenge. I just want to quickly mention Pixie Polite's weird trajectory in this episode. She received mostly positive critiques on the runway, and the only criticism she got was that her partner looked a lot older in drag. Weird considering that there are a lot of things that Pixie could have been read for in this makeover. But it's just like, if you're going to put someone in the bottom 2, maybe make it seem like they're going to be in the bottom 2. Pixie and John Biz should have been in the bottom 2 this week, because you cannot seriously look at these makeovers and say that Dakota was worse than John Biz. I love all of these queens, but this is honestly one of the worst episodes in all of Drag Race. I love Dakota so much, and I would love to see her back, maybe on Canada versus the World, so that Brooklyn can see her for her true potential. This, for me, along with Moon, has to be the most questionable bottom 2 spot for a makeover, both from a judging and storyline standpoint. Well, that's it. That's my list. Did I miss anyone out, and would you be interested in seeing a part 2? My review of Drag Race France All Stars episode 5 will be coming out soon. It's also a great season despite the questionable judging of this last episode, so I would recommend the season if you fancy watching some good Drag Race after the mess that was All Stars 10. Like, subscribe, Strictly season's coming up, and I'm excited to talk more about that when it happens. And yeah, I hope to see you next time.